I had a friend, Nick Rockefeller, okay, who was one of the Rockefeller family, and he, when I was running for governor in Nevada, he came to me, introduced himself to me through an attorney, and we became friends. We started talking about things, and I learned an awful lot from Mr. Rockefeller. And one of the things that we used to talk about was the ultimate plan of the banking industry, what they wanted to accomplish. And the goals of the banking industry, not just the Federal Reserve System, but the private banks in Germany and England, all over Italy, all over the world, they all work together. They're all central banks, and they're all part of the Communist Manifesto. You know, central banking is one of the major planks of the Communist Manifesto. We talk about America being a capitalistic country, but yet at the same time we have a central bank that plans everything for us, right? And the graduated income tax is another plank of the Communist Manifesto, right? So right there you have two major planks of the Communist Manifesto that have been brought in because of the Federal Reserve System, okay? In those chips, right, there'll be no more cash. And this is getting me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so, instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do, what
everything,
you sell.
Everything is in there. They control the chips and they control people. And you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal. That's their intentions. He's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told me what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event, and out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, you know, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we'd go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later, 9/11 happened, and I remember he was telling me how how you're gonna see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's gonna be this war on terror, which is no real enemy, and the whole thing is a giant hoax, you know, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, there's no question. He says, anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror. And that's why and that was the first lie. And the next lie was going into Iraq, you know, to get Saddam Hussein out with his weapons of mass destruction. That was the next lie. He was at the house one night, and we were talking, and he started laughing. He said, "Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about?" And I said, I had pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, you know? And he started to laugh. He said, "You're an idiot." And I said, why am I an idiot? He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded Women's Lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He says, there were two primary reasons. And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before Women's Lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up their family. Whoever makes the money makes the rules. Rothschild said that, and they make the money. Why are we allowing these private bankers to make the money for our country? It makes no sense. Why are we paying interest to these banks to make money for us when the government can do it itself without paying interest and without all that debt? There's no answer to that question, and it's the question no politician will raise. Because we have to borrow money, but we don't have to borrow money.
They designed it so we go into debt.
Exactly. We can create the money and back it by gold so they can't create too much of it, so you don't have the inflation. And the bankers make the money, they control the government, they buy the politicians, they tell us who gets into office. You have computer voting, that's a fraud. They do whatever they want to do to us. They do whatever they want to do to us. How could there be a war on terror and actually say that we're having a war against terrorism and leave the borders wide open? If you were the President of the United States, or I were the President of the United States, and 9/11 really happened the way they want us to believe it happened, the first thing you would do is shut down the borders so people couldn't get in the country to harm you. But they left the borders wide open because the bankers want the borders open. 11 was only a manifestation. It was done to create a fear in the American public, right? So that we will obey what they want us to do. Keep people in fear. It's this endless war on terrorism that doesn't really exist, so people will submit to whatever the government wants them to submit to. Searches, check your shoes, have ID cards, put chips in you, where you become servants to the elite. That's what this is all about, Well, the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve are partners, and the Bank of England is a private bank, and so is the Bundesbank in Germany, and the bank of all the banks of the G8 countries are all private banks. They're private central banks. And look, what happened in Europe? Didn't Europe vote down the European Constitution?
Yes.
They're still doing it. Didn't they vote down the euro? They're still doing it. They don't care what the people vote. They do whatever they want to do. What we want doesn't matter anymore. It's their agenda, it's their plans that matter. We have to stop being scared. We have to stand up and do what's necessary to take back, to stop these bankers, these elite, this government full of lies, congressmen full of liars. Today we live in a world where institutions are dominant, not people. People are secondary. It's all about corporations and institutions. In a democracy, 51% of the people control 49% of the people. If you're part of the 49%, you're not free. The psychological operations that they do to us, they make us believe that we're a democracy and that majority rules, you see? And they want you to believe that. Because then they tell you this poll says this many want this and this many want that and this many want this.
Benjamin Franklin, to paraphrase, said democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
Exactly. And then he also said in a republic, the sheep would have a gun. To protect himself, and that's the truth. America's not a democracy, but you ask the most intelligent people, what form of government America is supposed to be, they'll say a democracy, because that's what they've been brainwashed. They've been psyoped into believing that. They believe that we're in Iraq. They believe we're in Iraq to promote democracy. The word democracy, you hear George Bush saying democracy means freedom. No. Democracy equals New World Order. Democracy equals slavery. The word democracy is not synonymous with freedom. It's the opposite of freedom. Democracy is the worst form of government you can have because it's majority rule. And the government can tell you exactly what they want to tell you to do. So then in 1913, they bring the Federal Reserve System into being, right? And now you have this Federal Reserve System, which then in 1913 got the right to create money for the government. When before that, the government created its own money. Now the government, when it needed money, had to borrow it from this private bank called the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank owned by individuals, incorporated in Delaware. And so what happens is Now, the government borrows money from them to fund the government. Then the government says, well, we have to pay these people interest. How are we going to pay them interest? Let's impose a tax on the labor of the American people, which never existed before, to pay the interest of the bankers. But the point I'm trying to make is that by creating this Federal Reserve System, the government now became dependent on these private banks for money. And they started taxing us, you see. And so now what happens is that in 35, I believe it was, Social Security started. And they gave Social Security cards, said not to be used for identification, the Social Security number right on the card, right? And through Social Security, they started deducting money out of your paycheck. That was the first time they were ever could take money out of your paycheck, because people agreed to it because they thought it was going to their retirement fund. And so then when they instituted the income tax again, they started taking money out of your paycheck because Social Security could do it. So then they could do it again. You see what I'm saying? And
so now they've even taken control of the tax payment itself. I mean, literally like you're a slave. They're taking it right there when you make it.
Exactly.
They don't even trust the public enough to
send them a check. Yeah. Right. So they take it out automatically because they know people aren't going to want to pay it. So what's happened is that through the implementation of the Federal Reserve System, the government has become vested in these bankers, and they get their money from the bankers. And so then they impose a tax on us, which makes us more slaves, makes it more difficult for us to survive, right? Giving them more profits. And now what's happened is that through the Federal Reserve System, the bankers have pretty much taken control of our government. It doesn't matter Republican and Democrat anymore, because they're both the same.